It's my impression that the special counsel serves at the pleasure of the Attorney General, and that there are certain standards for his removal, and that his removal is only at the pleasure of the Attorney General. I may be wrong about that. I'm happy to review the statute.
Do you know of any reason for cause to fire Mr. Mueller as of this date?
No, I do not, Senator.
And that would be your decision if that ever happened, right?
That's correct.
And you're going to make it, nobody else?
As long as I'm in this position, Senator, it'll be my responsibility to make that decision.
In light of these reports that did come out yesterday, that folks at the White House, maybe the president, were looking at ways to fire the special counsel Mueller. And as you already testified today, given the current situation, you are the only person today in a position to actually do that firing. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right, Special Counsel Robert Mueller may be legally out of the president's reach. The power to hire and fire seems to rest squarely with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's only in charge because Jeff Sessions recused himself. But what if a new Attorney General was put in place? Joining us now, Senior Fellow in Governance Studies at the Brookings Institution and co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Lawfare blog, Benjamin Wittes. Very good to have you on board. So, sir, is it specifically out of the president's reach? Is there any other way around it? And if the president fired Mueller, what would your reaction be?
Well, okay, there's a lot of questions there. Is it out of reach? The answer is no.
Yeah.
He can, number one, he could remove Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein and replace them with people either on an acting basis or, if with Senate confirmation, on a permanent basis who could carry out his will. You know, they would have to, I think, act in violation of a regulation under which Mueller was appointed in order to do it. But the president probably does have the authority to rescind that regulation or order it rescinded, and that would eliminate the entire office of special counsel if he did that. So don't underestimate the raw power of the presidency here. It's quite substantial. What would my reaction be? I would think that would be a nuclear strike on American rule of law democracy. And I would hope that the Congress of the United States would awake from its long slumber, should awake even for the fact that we're having to have this conversation about it.
Let me ask you about something the Wall Street Journal raises in their editorial today, which is otherwise very critical of the president. They say the president's right that appointing Mueller as the special counsel was a mistake because of his close relationship both with the FBI, which he headed, and with his successor there, Mr. Comey. Is that a fair position, do you think? Is there some merit to that he was the wrong choice?
It's a ridiculous position. You know, first of all, this is an enormously complicated investigation. It involves counterintelligence elements, it involves criminal elements, it involves a wide swath of the bureaus and the Justice Department's investigative and potentially prosecutorial functions. There are relatively few people in the United States who are actually qualified to walk in on day one to run it, and Bob Mueller is one of those people.
I agree with you that he's qualified to deal with the complexity, but just to go to the specific point, doesn't his friendship with James Comey make it complicated for him now that James Comey is part of the investigation?
Look, I don't want to speak to their personal relationship, of which I'm not especially, you know, I don't know that relationship that well. I have never had the impression that it is a close personal relationship. Jim Comey was Mueller's successor. They worked together at the Justice Department. I believe they have a lot of mutual admiration. I know that that's true in Jim's case. I do not have the impression that they're especially close. And I think the closeness of the relationship is largely a creation of the people who want there to be some sort of conflict in that regard. I think it's a mutually respectful, admiring, professional relationship.
Carol Lee?
Yeah, if the president did take this step towards Mueller, and which you described as a nuclear strike on the rule of law, can you walk us through just what happens then? In terms of, is there somebody else, or what's the reaction, or what's the process?
Well, it sort of depends how he does it. You know, if the objective is to remove Mueller but not destroy the office, not eliminate the office, you could imagine somebody else stepping in or being appointed. That's what happened when Nixon fired Archibald Cox and you know, made the grave mistake of allowing the appointment of Leon Jaworski in his stead, and that, you know, turned into a very fateful error on Nixon's part. On the other hand, if he gets rid of the office, the investigation probably goes away with it. And you know, both are awful situations, but they are different. And so I think, you know, it's a little bit hard to game out without knowing exactly what he would try to do.
Benjamin Wittes, thank you so much for your insight this morning. And before we go to break, Richard Haass, I'm just curious, watching everything that we just talked about since the show started this morning, from the perspective of the foreign policy team, explain to me how they don't, and I mean General Mattis, I'm talking about McMaster, I'm talking about even Rex Tillerson. How do they just turn away and keep doing what they're doing? Why not approach this president and get some proper process in place here if you are from the perspective of these leaders?
Well, I think that's exactly what they should do. It's not working. You've got way too much what people call adhocracy. There's way too much improvisation. We still haven't faced a real crisis yet, and I don't believe this administration has put in place the procedures it will need if and when a real crisis, be it with North Korea or anyone else, actually materializes. What I think the troika you just mentioned should do is have a collective intervention in the Oval Office, because the president can't afford to lose all three of them.
And Kelly, too.
Kelly would be four. He can't afford to lose all of them. That really would be a crisis of confidence in this administration. So that's what I would argue they should do, and they should just insist on certain ground rules about how this administration is going to run itself. And the president has got to stop the tweeting, because these are White House statements which have the full weight of the presidency. Or at least get them cleared first. And I also think you've got to have certain understandings. They can't be end runs around the national security process. There can only be one foreign policy national security process at a time. The president can't have multiple ones running, and that's what he's got right now.
The president, I think, would see that as a coup attempt.
Right, okay, except he's just hired the closest to him, the communications director, also has a tweeting problem, which is just unbelievable at this point. It's fantastical. You can't write this stuff. Up next, President Trump leaves his own military scrambling after an abrupt policy announcement on Twitter that many say was just a distraction from other problems that he's created for himself. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.